Hello. I hope you find this story interesting. Your feedback, suggestions, and subscriptions are always welcome. Henry Cooper always believed that the worst thing about old age was loneliness. But he was wrong. The worst thing is being deceived when you can no longer defend yourself. Henry is 72 years old and lives in a small but cozy house in the suburbs of Chicago. Once upon a time, this house was filled with children's laughter and dinner conversations, but now it is silent. His children have long since moved away, and although he doesn't say it out loud, he knows they are not particularly interested in his life. He does not complain. Life hasn't been too cruel to him, but it hasn't been too generous either. 50 years of hard work at a car factory, a steady salary, no adventures. He always thought that after retirement he would finally be able to live for himself. A little traveling, fishing, maybe even a new love. But instead, he got weak legs, heart problems, and endless pills. He used to be able to take care of himself, but lately it has become harder. Sometimes he forgot to take his medication. Sometimes he felt like his legs were not listening. So when his daughter Sarah advised him to hire a nurse, he agreed. That's how Amanda came into his life. Amanda was young, no more than 35. She was pretty, always smiling, caring. She came every morning, prepared breakfast, monitored his medications, helped with shopping. She knew when he needed his blood pressure checked, when it was best to make tea with honey, and when he just wanted to be quiet. Henry was cautious at first. After all, a stranger in your home is always a risk. But Amanda quickly gained his trust. She didn't just do her job, she talked to him, joked with him, listened to his stories about his youth, about the factory, about his old Chevy that had been sitting in the garage for years. After a few months, Henry began to feel that Amanda was not just a caregiver. She became someone close to him, perhaps even closer than his own children. One morning, Henry sat down to drink coffee as usual. Amanda went to the store, and he decided to check his mail. When he opened the box, he found a letter from the bank. His heart sped up. He hadn't ordered any statements, but something made him tear open the envelope. Then he felt a chill go down his spine. There was much less money in his account than he expected. Much less. He put the letter down and took a deep breath. Maybe I just forgot something, he thought. Maybe I paid for something and didn't remember. He decided not to panic for now. But somewhere in the back of his mind, an unpleasant feeling that he hadn't felt in years awoke. The fear that something was wrong. All his life, Henry had trusted numbers. Payroll records, loan payments, pension savings, they never lied. And now his own bank account was telling him something that made his blood run cold. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Henry couldn't get that letter from the bank out of his head. He sat in his living room, holding it in his hands, and tried to remember where the money might have gone. He had always been careful. He lived modestly and saved every dollar. His pension was enough to pay for utilities, food, medicine, and small expenses. He never spent too much. But now the amount in his account was much smaller than he remembered. Maybe it's a mistake, he said to himself, putting the letter away. But inside doubt was already brewing. When Amanda returned from the store, Henry watched her more closely than usual. She was as friendly as ever. She put his purchases in the fridge and made him tea. But when he tried to ask her casually, "Have you ever seen a bank make a mistake in a statement?" she froze for a moment. Just for a moment. But he noticed it. Henry, banks make mistakes all the time, she said, looking away. She usually looked him straight in the eye. Now she was avoiding his gaze, and for some reason, it seemed disturbing. While the next morning, While Amanda went outside to talk on the phone, Henry took an old notebook out of his closet. He always wrote down all his expenses there. He flipped through the last few pages. His latest payments, utilities, pharmacy, groceries. Nothing out of the ordinary. But the amount in the bank should have been more. Much more. His palms were sweating. He picked up the letter again and looked at the details more closely. There were several cash withdrawals he didn't remember. And another transaction, a large sum of money transferred to an unknown account. A cold shiver ran down his spine. Who had done this? Henry couldn't sleep that night. He lay in his chair, staring at the dark ceiling and trying to put it all together. Lately, Amanda had been disappearing into the next room, talking on the phone in a whisper. She wasn't as attentive anymore. Sometimes it seemed like she was avoiding his questions, and now these strange disappearances of money. Was it a coincidence? Or was he just getting paranoid? His heart was beating faster than he would have liked. He closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would figure it out. People get used to trusting those around them, especially when you feel weak. But Henry has always known one rule: if something feels wrong, it is definitely wrong. And this time he decided to find out the truth. The morning started the same way as always. Amanda came in, made breakfast, turned on the TV. Everything was as usual. But Henry no longer felt calm. Something was weighing on him. In after Amanda went out into the yard to talk on the phone, he quickly went to his desk. He took out an old folder from the drawer where he kept all the bank documents. For a few minutes he looked through the papers. His eyes ran over the numbers, dates, and transactions. Suddenly, a sharp cold fear clutched his chest. Money had been withdrawn from his account for the past 3 months. Small amounts, $100, $200, $500, and then all in cash, and then one big transfer to a third-party account. $10,000. Henry felt dizzy. He sat down in his chair, his fingers tightening on the edge of the table. $10,000. That was more than half of his savings. Who had done this? He could say that someone had hacked into his account. But the cash withdrawal. It was at the nearest ATM, just a few blocks from his house. Henry slowly turned his gaze to the door behind which Amanda stood. No, it is impossible. She couldn't have done it. But the more he thought about it, the more all the details came together. He needed proof. A few years ago, when he was still driving on his own, his son gave him a small surveillance camera. Henry installed it in the living room to keep an eye on the front door. But then he forgot about it. Now it could come in handy. Henry went to the bookshelf, pulled out an old laptop, and plugged in the camera. And his hands were shaking as he opened the last entry. An image of his living room appeared on the screen. He saw Amanda walking around the room, cleaning. Everything looked normal. But a few minutes later, something changed. In the video, Amanda approaches his desk. She looks around. She waits for him to leave the room, and then she opens the drawer. Henry holds his breath. The recording clearly showed her taking his papers. Looking through them, takes out a bank card, and then quickly puts everything back. Henry felt his heart pounding in his ears. It wasn't a mistake. She really did it. He closed the laptop and clenched his hands into a fist. Now he knew the truth, but what to do next? He was old and weak, and Amanda. She was there every day, and if she could steal money from him, what's to stop her from doing something worse? When you are over 70, you realize one cruel truth, family, is not always the people you raised. Sometimes they are just people who were once close to you. Henry always thought that his children would support him if something happened. When the time came to call them, he realized that they had long since ceased to be his support. Henry could not delay any longer. The camera gave him the answer he didn't want to hear. His nurse was stealing money from him. But what to do next? The police. What would he tell them? My money is missing and I suspect the woman who takes care of me. He felt a familiar feeling rise up in his chest, powerlessness. The only people who could help him were his children. He picked up his phone and started flipping through his contacts list. He dialed Jack first, his eldest son, who is in his 40s. But they used to be close, but then each of them got their own life. Jack moved to New York, became busy and important. For the last few years, he called only on holidays. The phone rang for a long time. Finally, the other side answered, "Hello. Jack, it's Dad." "Oh, Dad, what's up?" "Or I'm in trouble." There was silence on the other end of the line. "What's wrong?" Henry felt his throat go dry. He didn't like to ask for help. I think my nurse is stealing money from me. I found some strange transactions. I don't know what to do." "Dad, are you sure?" There was something alien in his son's voice. "Yes. I have proof. I want to go to the police, but I need help." Jack sighed. "Dad, I'm really busy right now. I'm in the middle of something at work. Let me tell you what, I'll deal with this later, okay?" Henry squeezed the phone tighter. "Jack, this is serious." "I know, Dad, but I can't drop everything right now. Call Sarah. Maybe she'll think of something." Rings. Jack hung up the phone. Henry sighed heavily and pressed another number. Sarah, his youngest daughter. She lived in Los Angeles and was constantly busy with her startup. He heard her voice even less often than Jack's. She answered quickly. "Daddy!" "Hi, honey. I'm in trouble." "What's wrong?" He told her everything. He told her about the bank statements, the camera, the suspicions. Sarah didn't say anything. Sarah, Dad. "Well, what do you want to do?" "Or file a police report." Oh. Well, look, maybe you misunderstood. I saw her on the video. Maybe she was just looking for something." Henry felt his heart clench. "You don't believe me." No, Dad, well, this all sounds like a lot of trouble. You know how the system works. Are you sure it's worth it? So you're suggesting I just keep quiet? I'm suggesting that you think about whether you want to get involved at your age. Sarah. Dad, I have to run now. Let's talk tomorrow, okay? Rings. Henry dropped the phone on the table and stared at it as if he couldn't believe it had just happened. His kids, they weren't going to help. He was alone. Alone in his own home. Alone in the face of danger. But he would not give up. If no one comes to his aid, then he will act alone. He has only one thing to find out: how far has Amanda gone? There are moments when trust cannot be regained. When you see the truth with your own eyes, and there is no longer any doubt. Henry didn't want to believe it. But now he had no choice. Amanda had to answer for everything. After his children had effectively brushed him aside, Henry realized he could only rely on himself. He watched the camera footage again. And Amanda's every move. Every gesture she made. She knew what she was doing. But the video alone was not enough. He needed irrefutable proof, and this time he had to catch her red-handed. The next day, he pretended nothing had happened. In the morning, when Amanda came into the house, he was sitting in his usual place, reading the newspaper. "How are you feeling today, Mr. Cooper?" she asked, smiling as if nothing was happening. "I'm fine, Amanda. A little tired. I guess I didn't sleep well last night," he replied calmly. "That's not good. I'll make you some tea, okay?" Yes, of course." As she went into the kitchen. Henry slowly got up, took his cell phone out of his pocket, and opened the camera. He had put a small bundle of money in the drawer today, specifically to see if she would try to take it. He needed proof here and now. When Amanda came back with the tea, he pretended to fall asleep in the chair. He heard her stand still for a minute. Then her footsteps slowly approached the table. The rustling of paper. Silence. When Henry opened one eye, just enough to see Amanda carefully open the drawer and pull out the money. His heart was pounding, but he made himself wait. She quickly stuffed the bills into her pocket and was about to close the drawer when he spoke. "Did you find what you were looking for?" Amanda flinched and jerked her hand away. Her eyes rounded and her cheeks flushed with color. "A what?" I was just checking to make sure everything was in place, Mr. Cooper." Henry slowly picked up his cell phone and pressed the stop button. I think the police will decide what you were checking for," he said coldly. Amanda stood there for a few seconds, as if in disbelief that she had been caught. Then her expression changed dramatically. Her smile disappeared and her eyes narrowed. "You don't understand," she said quietly. "No, Amanda, I understand perfectly well now," he replied, trying to keep his voice calm. You won't go to the police, will you?" Her voice became soft, almost gentle. "What do you think?" She tilted her head to the side and suddenly took a step toward him. Listen. You have no one but me. You don't want to be alone, do you?" Her voice was quiet, but there was something frightening in it. Henry felt a chill run down his spine. It wasn't just a lie, it was a threat. She wasn't afraid of him, and now he understood why. He was old, frail, alone in his house. And she knew she could do whatever she wanted, and if the police wouldn't help him. Henry had always believed that good triumphs over evil. But now he was sitting in his own home, clutching the phone with the evidence of the crime, and he realized that justice was not a fairy tale, but a battle that had yet to be won. And this battle was just beginning. After talking to Amanda, Henry couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about her eyes, cold, calm, without a shadow of remorse. She did not beg, did not make excuses. She was not afraid. What did this mean? That she had done something even worse. His hand automatically reached for the drawer where he kept important documents. The will, bank statements, the deed to the house. And the drawer was empty. Cold fear clutched his chest. He immediately got up and started going through the other drawers, looking in the nightstands and on the shelves. But there was nothing. The documents had simply disappeared. His head was spinning. Without them, he was nothing. His money, his home, everything depended on those papers. He took a deep breath and pulled out his phone. He could not wait. He called the police. 20 minutes, 30, 40. Finally, there was a knock at the door. Two officers, one young, one slightly older. "Mr. Cooper, you called the police." "Yes, come in." Henry briefly told them everything about the bank statements, the camera footage, the missing money, and finally the documents. The younger officer asked cautiously, "Are you sure you didn't just put them somewhere and forget?" Henry gritted his teeth. "I'm not a fool. I checked everything." The senior officer looked at his partner and shrugged. If there's no evidence of forced entry, it's going to be hard to prove theft." I told you I have a video." Henry held up his phone, ready to show the recording. The officers watched it. The young man coughed. "It looks suspicious, but she's not directly stealing anything. Are you kidding me?" "Or we can question her, but that's not enough to make an arrest." Henry felt his hands start to shake. She's just going to take my money and papers and you're not going to do anything." The senior officer rubbed his chin. "I'll file a formal complaint. We'll check her background, see if she's been involved in similar cases before. But it's not that easy." Henry wanted to scream. What's so hard about it? But he just clenched his fists. The police wouldn't do anything. He would have to solve everything himself. The next morning he realized that things were even worse than they seemed. Henry decided to call the bank to freeze the accounts. But when he said his name, the operator answered, "I'm sorry, Mr. Cooper, but you longer have an account with our bank." Silence. "A what?" "Your account was closed 2 days ago." Who closed it?" "We have a document signed by you." But he didn't sign anything. Amanda did. Amanda did it. And he lost the money. He lost his papers. But he still had his house. And it was at that moment that the doorbell rang. A man in a business suit stood at the door. "Mr. Cooper?" "I'm from the real estate agency. You know your house is up for sale, right?" Henry heard his ears ring. His house, it was gone. "You can get your money back. You can get your papers back. But when your home is taken away, you are left with despair." Henry Cooper realized this too late. Henry looked at the man in the suit as if he had just told him he was dead. "I'm sorry." "What?" The real estate agent spoke calmly, even politely. "Your house is officially on the market, and all the documents are signed." Henry felt the world around him begin to blur. "I didn't sign anything. But here is your signature." The man held out a copy of the agreement. Henry looked at it closely. His name. His signature. But it was a fake. He felt something break in his chest. This house was life. His children grew up here. His wife died here. And now they are just throwing it away. "You have 30 days to vacate the premises." The agent spoke politely but coldly. "If you have any questions, please contact the legal department." "And if I don't leave?" The man sighed. "There will be a trial. But frankly, it won't help you." Henry closed the door and slowly sank into a chair. "It's Amanda. It has to be her." "But how did she do it? And most importantly, why?" He gritted his teeth. If she thought he would just accept it, she was wrong. He had lost everything. But if Amanda thinks she's won, she doesn't know what a real fight is. Some battles are lost before they even begin, but Henry Cooper was not going to give up, even if everything was against him. He knew Amanda was involved. But knowing is one thing, proving it was quite another. Henry opened his laptop and began to search for the house sale documents. Names, dates, signatures. Something didn't seem right. He dialed the number of the law firm listed in the documents. "Good afternoon." A woman's voice answered. "How can I help you?" "I need to know who made the sale of my house." "What is your name?" Henry Cooper." A short pause. "Oh yes, your case is closed. All the documents are signed by you personally." "That's not true, but the signature is there." Henry gripped the phone tighter. I want to see the lawyer who handled this matter." "I'm sorry, but that's not possible." "Why not?" "He doesn't work for the company anymore." Henry realized that everything had been thought out. Amanda knew he couldn't prove anything, and the paperwork was done. The lawyer disappeared. But he still wasn't going to give up. In the evening, when she returned, he was waiting for her in the kitchen. "Nice day, Mr. Cooper?" she asked with a smile. "Very much so, especially the news about my house." Amanda froze for a moment. "You knew this was coming, didn't you?" Her gaze remained cold. "I don't know what you mean, but I understand everything." He took a step toward her. I will find a way to get everything back." She tilted her head to the side. "Are you sure you still have time?" It was an open threat. And now Henry realized Amanda wasn't just a con artist. She wasn't going to stop. There are times when you have to make a choice. Wait until you are completely destroyed. Or strike first. Henry Cooper had nothing left to lose. The police brushed him off. His children turned away. The law firm disappeared with the evidence. But Henry knew one thing: everyone has a weakness. He had to find it. The next day he went downtown to a small office where a private detective worked. This man had once uncovered a neighbor's infidelity, and Henry had memorized his name. "Oh, what do you want, Mr. Cooper?" "I need to know everything about Amanda. It's going to cost money. I'll pay it." Even if he didn't have much left. And 2 days later, Henry received the report. Amanda used fake documents to work as a nurse. She changed names, addresses, phone numbers. And he wasn't her first victim. All old, all lonely. But none of them could prove the fraud, because they disappeared. Henry sat in the kitchen, clutching the papers. He could take this to the police. But would it help? Amanda was still in his house, and now he knew she wasn't just a con artist. He took a deep breath. Who if the police didn't help? Then he would do it himself. This was no longer just a fight. This is a matter of life and death. Who's going to win? Henry Cooper has lost everything. But there was one that could not be taken away from him, the desire to fight. The only question was at what cost? He sat in the darkness clutching Amanda's papers. Everything was ready. He could hand it over to the police, make it public, make her answer. But what if that wasn't enough? What if she disappeared like before? His thoughts revolved around one word: revenge. When Amanda returned, Henry was waiting for her in the kitchen. "We need to talk," he said, his voice calm. She smiled as if nothing had happened. "Always happy to talk, Mr. Cooper. I know everything about you." Her smile grew colder. And what are you going to do about it?" "I have proof." Amanda shrugged. "And then what?" "Do you think anyone will believe an old man who gets things wrong?" He took a deep breath. She was right. He couldn't defeat her with her own methods. But he could do something she didn't expect. "I gave the copies to the detective." Her eyes narrowed. "What?" "If anything happens to me, he'll give these documents to the police." Now Amanda looked confused. She realized the game was up. The next morning Amanda disappeared. No trace, no explanation. Only an empty house and deep silence. Henry did not feel happy. He hadn't won. But he hadn't lost either. His life would never be the same again. But he is still here, and that means only one thing: the game is on. Thank you for sticking with me to the end. Subscribe, leave comments. What would you do in Henry's shoes?